is Will, broadcasting from the Prairie Sportsman Studios. Presented by OnX. Know where you stand with OnX. We're not just a radio show anymore.
Heck yeah.
This is Sporting Journal Radio.
That's right. Welcome to the show. I'm Bret Amundson. Thanks for tuning in on this station here. By downloading the podcast or watching this on YouTube, make sure you like and share and subscribe to our channel if you like the show. Of course, if you don't like it, then I guess you probably won't. But hopefully you like what we've got for you this week because we're going to talk fishing. We're going to talk ice fishing and fishing for some different species. And then we're also going to talk about what this weather is doing, this snow and blizzard and the wind, and what habitat needs to be on the landscape to protect our wildlife. Jared Wiklund from Pheasants Forever is going to join us, and we also got Joe Henry who will be back, of course, from Lake of the Woods. And we've got Dan Amundson right over there.
Hi.
Dan, how's it going?
I'm doing great. I'm having a day, though, but we're doing good.
Yeah, what's going on?
Don't worry about it. You'll fire me if I tell you.
Probably not. But
we're having some equipment
maybe.
issues, but we're getting there.
Well, we have got more gear set up in here than we normally have. David Eckhardt's right over there. Well, how you doing, David?
Doing good.
We got all kinds of cameras, lights, monitors, computers. We're probably going to start a fire.
A lot of cables right around here.
I don't want to call the fire department.
A lot of cables, and then two dogs that just like to be in the middle of it. So things are getting unplugged, knocked over. We'll see if we can make it through the show without any major equipment failures.
No promises.
No promises at all whatsoever. David, I'm glad you made it driving up through the snow. When we recorded this that you're watching right now, there was a lot of snow on the ground.
Yeah, we got a lot of snow. At least the roads, they've got them all plowed now, so they were pretty clear. Getting out of my driveway was another topic.
How much snow do you think you got?
5-6 inches, but it likes to blow in.
Yeah.
So a couple big drifts in the yard.
That snow that we got on what day is it today? On Tuesday and Wednesday this week. All of a sudden it was supposed to start Monday night at 8:00, and then it didn't start till about Tuesday at about 10 a.m. here. And when it started, it was just like. It was like somebody popped a balloon and just all the snow was coming at once.
Shook the snow globe.
Yeah. It was so much snow coming down, but the difference, I think, between this storm and the one we had before was we didn't have the wind with it this time,
right. So
it was a lot easier to deal with. But, Dan, that lets you go fishing a couple of days.
Oh, thank goodness it did. I was having a great time on the lake. The bite on certain spots has been good. Other spots have been terrible, but it's been good. And now this blizzard's here and travel's going to be tricky, and it makes me sad. It might shut down my bite, but that's okay. The long winter ahead of us, so we'll move on.
Do you got a snowmobile, David?
I do not.
Yeah, you might need one.
I've got a wheeler with tracks, though. So
oh, there you go. Yeah,
I
you don't need one.
Get around, no problem.
Yeah, it's good to be a farmer. Gosh, I want one of those. I was looking at that. I might actually get a new wheeler, I think.
Get one big enough for tracks.
Yeah, for sure. What do you got, like an 800 or what do you have?
700.
700?
Yeah.
What would you think about a three-wheeler? I've been thinking about the three-wheeler game.
2 tracks and a ski on the front.
Wouldn't that be sweet?
awesome.
People do it.
Big Red.
People do it.
Sweet.
I love three-wheelers.
Did you see that video going around on Instagram? Well, it's probably been going around for a while, but it finally came through on my algorithm with in Reels, and it was just a bunch of random clips of guys on three-wheelers, and one of them, he was just like he was riding a wheelie and just shooting fireworks off the back of the three-wheeler. Yeah. Was that in our group?
Yeah, I think I sent that to you.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Well, I saw the one. I think I saw it today. There was a bunch of three-wheeler clips of spinning out.
Yep.
I want to go buy one.
The
There's one. I know.
Yeah.
But they float, right?
They float, but they usually float upside down.
Well, hey, it's better than sinking.
That's a problem.
I know where there's just one sitting out in the yard right now, covered in snow.
A three-wheeler?
Yeah, we should just go offer
I
the
got
guy
one in my barn.
Yeah.
Well, this
Big
one.
Red?
Nah, 185.
Well, there's a Big Red sitting out in the yard that we should go.
Ooh, Big Red.
Finesse. Mm-hmm.
That's sweet.
Anyways.
Well, fishing conditions might get a little tough, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that coming up later in the show, and we should probably talk about who our sponsors are this week.
Should we talk about that? Hang
suppose.
on, give me a second.
Because we got a new one this week, too. It's show season, so we're going to talk about a lot of the shows that are going to be going on around the Midwest, some that you might have to travel to. And what it's like to go to, like the ice fishing show or game fair or the deer and turkey classic, and what these shows have morphed into these days. We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. Are you ready, Dan?
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go.
All right, good.
This week we have OnX Hunt. Know where you stand with OnX. Cool things coming from OnX lately.
Yeah.
Lake of the Woods Tourism. Lake of the Woods is the walleye capital. Plan a trip for this winter at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. Live Target. Match the hatch at livetargetlures.com. Haybell Heights Campground and Resort on Devil's Lake. Book a trip to Devil's Lake and fish out of a snow bear. Learn more at haybellheights.com. Al Claire Audio. Save your hearing in the field with Al Claire. Learn more at alclaireoutdoors.com. Ottertail Lakes Country. Find your inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com. Good bite up there happening right now. And Prairie Sportsman, the new season starts in just a few weeks. Well, you can watch episodes anytime at the Prairie Sportsman YouTube channel while you wait.
Yeah, and Riverbend Resort, of course, up on Lake of the Woods. We're going to be heading up there in a couple of weeks for an Aglow event. If you're looking to do some ice fishing at Lake of the Woods, riverbendresort.com. And then the Minnesota Deer and Turkey Classic is going to be back at Canterbury Park this year. It's going to be coming up March 11th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Oh, can we make fun of you for not being prepared?
I'm trying to find it right now. Because there's a lot of things going, because that's the same weekend as a couple of other shows that we're going to be at. Northwest Sports Show, we're going to be there for Taz and Lake Lodge. March 10th, 11th, and 12th. mndeerclassic.com has all the info. Lee and Tiffany will be there. Nick Munt is going to be there from Bone Collector this year. Melissa Bachman will be there. I think I'll be there. I think I'm going to be doing some sort of appearance there. You guys can come. We can all go sit there at the booth.
Do I have to? I don't want to be so. Can I have my own slot and not have to sit with you?
Oh, wow. This is what
rough crowd.
Wow. Yeah. You can bring your antlers in and get them scored for free.
You should bring your antlers in.
I could.
You should.
You
know what antlers I'm referring to.
Oh yeah, the one I shot this year. Yeah, I know what those score. I don't need any help with that one. But yeah, that'll be a good time. Canterbury Park. Canterbury Park is kind of a cool location for this. David, that you've been to the one you've gone to it at Canterbury Park.
Yep, I've been there once.
It's kind of nice. And then if you want to go play poker, you can do that one there too. But Did you ever go to it when it was at the State Fair or in Blaine or anything?
No. That was the first time I'd ever gone to it when it was at Canterbury.
Now it's changed a little bit. It's changed owners over the years, and it's kind of moved locations. And I'll tell you what, the Canterbury Park is a great spot because there's a lot of parking there. It's easy to get to right off the highway, and you can pull in lots of places to park, walk right in, and then it's a big sprawling place. Like every time you think you've reached the end of the vendors, you go around a corner or down another hallway, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of other booths. Huge deer racks there. I mean, like the mounts that you see at this thing is unreal. So the Minnesota Deer and Turkey Classic, now presented by Select Heartland Chevy Dealers, coming March 10th, 11th, and 12th to Canterbury Park and Shakopee. Bunch of other shows, of course. Pheasant Fest. We're going to talk to Jared Wiklund about Pheasant Fest coming up at the Minneapolis Convention Center. That is going to be in February, and the dates
17th, 18th, 19th.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Got you, man. I'm prepared.
Northwest Sports Show is running the same weekend as the Deer Classic. So what's kind of nice about that is what I'll do is go to both. And they're not too far away. It's like 15 minutes apart between the two different places. So a lot of times you can make a weekend out of it. If you got to travel a little bit, go to one, go to the other. It's kind of nice. Do a little bit of fishing at the Northwest Sports Show, content research, and do some, obviously, the hunting stuff at the Minnesota Deer and Turkey Classic after that. So, and then we're going to be traveling. We were going to be doing SHOT Show in Vegas. You guys have never been to SHOT before, have you?
No.
Not yet.
It's kind of wild, and I'm sure we'll get you there, Dan, at some point. I was looking forward to going this year, but something's come up, and we're not going to be going. Sounds like a chance we might be doing some hunting instead, hopefully, which is always kind of fun.
That's a fair trade-off, I think.
Yeah.
I'd rather hunt than talk about hunting.
Yeah. Well, and SHOT's fun. It's like 5 days in Vegas.
Yeah, that's too long.
That's too much.
Yeah.
That's too much time in Vegas.
Way too much Vegas.
When we did it, I've only been there once, and I ended up spending like 7 or 8 days in Vegas straight, because then I ended up kind of staying. But we didn't really party. We didn't drink. We just kind of worked the show all day, and then just kind of went back. We rented like a condo. It was like 3 of us, and just kind of stayed in that condo and worked. And that's not so bad. If you can just kind of work it, and it's not so bad. And then I stayed for a couple of days and met up with some friends, and then did Vegas things after that. So that was only 2 nights.
That's appropriate.
That's the appropriate.
Okay, 7. Even though like working, you can work wherever, but do you really want to pick Vegas to do your work?
It wasn't fun.
I mean,
a lot of distractions.
And you gotta at least here if I'm working, I can look out and look at a food plot. The kind of food plots in Vegas there's no pheasants eating in those.
They're buffets. Yeah, they're buffets.
I call them human food plots.
Over the years too, these shows have kind of changed. Some shows have come and gone because the internet really changed why you'd need to go to a show. You might want to go to learn about a resort somewhere or a fishing destination or a lake. Now you can do that online. But for you guys that still like to go, because David, you were talking about the ice show?
Yeah.
You like to go to that one, the St. Paul Ice Show?
Yep.
Why do you like to go to that? Why do you still go to a show like that?
I like to see the new products, touch them, really study them without, you can't just look at a jig online and be like, oh, I wonder how that works, or how's the action of that's going to work. And some of those booths, you can test them out or, actually hold it and get a feel for it. And I don't know. That's why I like to go. And then there's always a lot of cool new stuff that you wouldn't normally see. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think going for product testing is still
right.
Still, obviously, a good reason to go. Dan, what shows do you like?
I mean, I like Game Fair. I don't go to a whole lot anymore. The problem is, it's not a problem. It's not a bad thing. But we are always working the shows now when I go. Yeah. So it's like, it's kind of one of those things. Do I really want to go to a show when I'm not working because it feels like I'm working? But I still don't mind. Game Fair is a good time. I like. If you can bring a gun and your dog to a show, that's a good time.
Right.
You can't complain about that one.
Yeah.
And kind of the same thing. I mean, heck, you could go grab a shotgun and shoot a shotgun at Game Fair and test it out. It's kind of the same thing you're talking about, David. But otherwise, it's kind of gone by the wayside. I mean, it's kind of like Black Friday. Black Friday used to be line up after Thanksgiving and you go shop, and now you just shop online for like 3 straight days through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Cyber Monday. Shows are kind of the same way. They'll hold these places will seem to hold a show deal, and you can go buy it at the show. You can also just buy it online. They'll run the same deal to try to... Sometimes, but it's becoming more and more common, right? So like even that draw is not always there. I know there have been good deals. Like I heard of a killer deal on live scopes at the ice show this year that was only a show deal, so that'd be an incentive to go. But other than that, some of that's going by the wayside, but it is still fun. And especially for us, we know we always have a lot of friends that work these shows. So that's kind of fun to just go see all these people in one room that we otherwise wouldn't get to see.
I think that's the best part about it. I mean, I always used to, when I'd go to Game Fair, and that's probably my favorite show, I would always wait till the last day of Game Fair to go buy my stuff. And I missed out on a lot of things because they'd be sold out or picked over or not my size, but that's usually when I found some pretty good deals on things. And when it comes to even like Taz and Lake Lodge, we'll have show-only specials on stuff that we won't advertise online and things like that. But I think that's the beauty for me, is not having to work them anymore. A lot of times we'll be doing some work when we go to these shows, but we're not running booths anymore. And man, I used to just dread having to go set up a booth, and you'd sit there all day. And it was always nice talking to people, and you're obviously doing business, and it's important, but it's a lot of work.
Oh, that set up and tear down. Like that was the best part of ICAST, was we didn't have to set up or tear down. Rolled right in, worked the booth, and rolled right out.
That booth, when we had Minnesota Sporting Journal magazine, Matt Soberg, we bought the booth from Matt, and it was part of the deal, and it was beautiful. It was like a log cabin kind of front, but it was heavy. It was huge. We'd need a trailer half the time to lug that thing around. I finally did get it in the back of my Silverado.
Yeah, I remember one day, it was the last day of Game Fair, and you were great at this towards the end. You would find a way to be on some other version of work the last day, and all of a sudden it was
probably
just
buying stuff.
Yeah, no, I don't know what I think you went to like drag races at Brainerd once. You've gone goose hunting during shows.
Drag races.
I don't know. One time in Game Fair, you just up and went to the races in Brainerd. But this time, I don't know where you were. You might have been doing some stuff, but you were gone, and so it's just me and my dad that tore down, and he had his work Ford Escape or whatever. And we somehow crammed that whole thing in that. I remember just sitting on the front seat. Like we had to scoot the front seat so far forward. So I was like
pressed against the dash.
Up against the dash on all the way back to Woodbury. Like if we got into an accident, I would have died.
Well, the airbag
would have killed me. But we did it. But yeah, it was a cool booth, but I don't miss that one.
Well, that was always part of the problem. You know how much we travel now. Well, I was traveling a little bit back then too, and we'd have to travel during some of these shows. And thankfully, you and your dad, my brother Wade, would thankfully work these shows and do a lot of setup and teardown for me when I couldn't be there. So I really appreciated that. And but believe me, I set that booth up and tore it down plenty of times.
I know, that's why you got good at just somehow.
I got this thing.
I got it. How do they just
some you guys are done?
Work deal at the.
Oh no, I missed it.
EIR this year.
But yeah, that's so weird because I only went. I think I only went to races there once, maybe twice.
Well, that was probably the time. You were there. I know you were there.
No. I probably had more fun.
I'm sure you did.
Well, in any case, I'm really excited about these shows. Pheasant Fest is a great time, especially if you like dogs and hunting. I mean, to me, like Pheasant Fest is essentially like Game Fair, only indoors. And granted, it's more upland focused than waterfowl focused, but Game Fair is kind of half upland focused. So it's a lot like Game Fair, only indoors in downtown Minneapolis. So I'm looking forward to that one. And, Deer Classic will be great. And then I've got to go to Chicago for one for TASM, All Canada show, which
get your affairs in order.
Yeah. But it'll be good to see the guys from Saskatchewan and be a part of that one. So anyway, all right. If you're going to shows, if you're planning to go to shows, let us know. Comment below. Tell us what your favorite shows are and why you still like going to shows as well. We're going to talk about Pheasant Fest with Jared Wiklund coming up. We'll also talk about what kind of winter habitat is necessary to keep pheasants and other wildlife alive through some of these winter storms that we've been having this year. And we'll get a lake conditions and fishing report from Joe Henry up at Lake of the Woods coming up. It's ice fishing season and time to plan your trip to Riverbend Resort on Lake of the Woods. Stay at the Lakeside Resort along the Rainy River in one of their new cabins and enjoy delicious meals and hot or cold beverages in the Miles Lab Bar and Grill. Or stay in one of their comfortable sleeper houses on the ice, complete with a TV, stove, and lots of walleyes right beneath your feet. You also have the option of staying at their motel, the Walleye Inn, located in Baudette. Book your ice fishing trip to famous Lake of the Woods today at riverbendresort.com. That's riverbendresort.com. 852 million acres of public land, 147 million private properties, all in the palm of your hand. The #1 hunting GPS app just got better. With hundreds of custom map layers, 3D and topographic maps you can easily scout on the road or at home before you go. And now you can get important weather details, CWD detection, and even know what crops have been planted where. Get the most trusted hunting GPS app ever made. OnX. Know where you stand with OnX.
Looking for winter adventure? Might as well pick a place with over 1,000 lakes. Otter Tail County, Minnesota is in the middle of everywhere, offers a simpler pace, and has something for everyone. Find your inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com.
This is Sporting Journal Radio. Thanks for tuning in on this station right here by downloading the podcast, maybe streaming on demand at sportingjournal.com, or maybe you're watching this at YouTube. Thank you very much. I'm Bret Amundson. And, the end of this hunting season depression is starting to set in a little bit. And as people celebrate the new year and begin their resolutions of diets and exercise, I'm wishing for a bit more time in the field. And it seems as though I just never get enough time out there. Fall's just never quite long enough for me, and I can't complain about how much I hunted because I hunted pretty much every day, so I can't really complain about it. I just always want more, and thankfully there are some potential bird hunting trips in the works, including one to South Dakota since their pheasant season runs to the end of January. But will the amount of snow that we've gotten affect that decision? Should these birds and other wildlife be given a break at this point to weather the weather? Thank you very much. See what I did there? We're gonna thank you. Yeah, we're gonna discuss that and more with Jared Wiklund from Pheasants Forever right now. Jared, how you doing?
Hey, Bret. I'm great. Thanks for having me on, and happy New Year to you both.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Now, I want to talk about Pheasant Fest that's coming up. It's back in Minnesota this year. It's probably about a month away or so, and I want to discuss why people should go to Pheasant Fest this year. But first, let's just jump right into what's happening right now. This weather, it ain't good, is it?
No, if you're a grassland bird, or probably not even just for grassland birds, whitetails, whatever. These first couple storms that we've had, particularly that first one that lasted for 3 or 4 days with ice, followed by heavy wet snow, followed by high winds and low temperatures. That's a real downer if you're a grassland bird or other wildlife. And I'm not sure about you, but I know I've seen your videos, and I got out last Tuesday before the season ended. There's a significant amount of snow in the pheasant range. Yeah, there's a picture up on the screen there. There weren't any pheasants really in any of the grassland cover, so to speak of. There's enough snow on the landscape. We were hunting south central Minnesota, probably 12 to 13 inches on the ground, just depending where you were, and 5-6 foot drifts from the wind that we had. And the birds already, just going into the new year here, don't have a lot of places left to congregate and get out of harsh weather. So it's definitely a factor that we're thinking about right now, and thinking about our friend Mr. Pheasant. So
yeah, I found, and I kind of felt bad about it, because a lot of my late season hunts, I'd be driving around and you'd see all the pheasants along the roads or in the fields. And as I'd pull up to, some land that I was going to hunt at, a lot of times I'd be pushing those birds off of wherever they were, if they were feeding, scratching in the snow and feeding those fields, and then they'd fly into cover, and then you'd go chase them. And while I kind of felt bad about it, after about 15 minutes of plowing through those cattails, I didn't quite feel as bad anymore, because they could fly over all the hard spots. And then they had little holes that they could tuck into. And I was, as much as a lot of the cattails were filled in, there were a number of places I found where they could tunnel in and run around underneath. Now, not saying that's ideal, of course, but it's definitely better than the alternative of not being able to get underneath and hide out from the elements a little bit. So a lot of my late season hunts involved, just shooting one bird maybe, and I was pretty happy with that. And I'd just go out for an hour or so, kind of in the afternoon and try to get a bird I can. If I could, I'd bring both dogs just to get them both some exercise, let them run around a little bit. But it was interesting. I hunted a couple of times, Jared, where I went into some cattail sloughs. That picture of Mika, I love that shot right there. That bird, Jared, was kind of interesting, because we pulled up to a spot to hunt, and there were kind of some birds along the road, on the gravel there. And there was one rooster and a couple of hens, and the hens got up and flew. And I watched the rooster, and the rooster couldn't fly. So I don't know if he'd gotten, dinged earlier with a gun, with a gunshot at some point, or what his problem was, but he couldn't fly. I opened up, I took my old dog Meek out and let her have a crack at it. And she was able to plow through the snow. It was some pretty deep snow. I wasn't sure if she was going to get there. So I actually let Tiny out to see, to go get that rooster and just kind of, more or less put him out of his misery. And Mika did not let the little dog beat her to it. She went out there and got it and brought it back.
Mika.
Yeah. And that was the only that was the only pheasant we got that day, actually. So, but he was hurting.
I too have gotten I'm seeing a lot of pheasants on the side of the road. It's great to see, and I'm like, well, not necessarily, because they're coming out there because they're looking for grit, looking for scratch, looking for food. And the pheasants that I've seen so far, they seem okay. But we have gotten reports, especially that first big blizzard before Christmas, of dogs coming out with frozen pheasants in some locales over pheasant country. And then we did a winter report actually not too long ago about that first storm, and people that were out hunting were finding that the birds didn't necessarily have a ton of fat on them when they were getting field dressed. So little bit concerning, especially with the depth of the snow. Pheasants aren't necessarily like a turkey or some of those other animals that can really dig through through deep areas, but rarely does a pheasant starve. They've got a couple different things in their back pocket that they use, not just grain out of a field, but they eat a lot of native sources as well, which can really help them out this time of year.
Well, I've been fortunate that I've been able to hunt around some pretty good cover and food plots and, some habitat that's designed to help wildlife. And the last pheasant I shot this year was the biggest rooster I shot all year, and he was full of fat. He was real healthy.
Good.
But
that's excellent.
A couple of days earlier, I found one dead hen so far. So that wounded rooster and whatever happened to him, I don't know. But I did find one dead hen. But I've seen a lot of birds. Now, again, I'm in some pretty good habitat where I get to hunt at times, which made it really interesting because I walked a huge slough the other day, and it's one that historically has been full of pheasants late season. And I walked the entire thing, and I saw two hens in it. Now, the difference was it's the middle of the day, and I drove around the entire section afterwards, and everywhere I looked in all the fields, there was pheasants out there scratching out in the field. So more or less was just a question of timing for me. But it's this year, the late season tactics, it's if you're going to hunt, it was definitely, you definitely had to employ some different tactics to be successful.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've seen everybody, from just focusing on shelter belts, which is where a lot of them are right now, to, putting on the snowshoes. I've had a lot of questions from people. Hey, I read an article you wrote a couple years ago about late season hunting in South Dakota. And now that it goes through the end of January, can you give me any tips for going out there? And my biggest tip right now is just, you need to take stock of what the, of what the snow depths are. I mean, there's a lot of people that live out there that are saying, you're going to have a really, really hard hunt. Even if you can get to the birds, by the time you break through all that and make enough noise, a lot of them are going to say, see you later. So yeah. I think snow depth really is sort of the name of the game right now for late season pheasant hunters across the range, except when you start, because even Nebraska, northern Iowa, the snow's building up there too, but Minnesota and the Dakotas and parts of Montana specifically, they've got a lot of snow, and they're getting more from this storm that we're experiencing right now. So yeah, I think it really depends on your physical shape. It's not easy walking through 3, 4, 5 foot snow drifts, and that, and you're a guy that's 2 feet taller than I am. So
and that definitely plays a factor. From when I started pheasant hunting, I'd hear people say that about late season. Oh, you like that late season stuff because you're tall and lanky. And I'd just be like, oh, I just like being out there, and I don't have a problem busting through cattails. And I've hunted with a few other people that aren't quite as tall, or maybe not as in good a shape. And not that I'm in great shape, but they like to pheasant hunt in October. They like to walk grass. Yep. And once the snow falls and the cattails become the main habitat, they're done. They're on to ice fishing or deer hunting or whatever.
Late season, we've talked about this before in the show. It's really finding the bedroom next to a kitchen, a place that's got thermal cover once there's snow on the landscape, and if there's food nearby. It's a pretty easy recipe for finding pheasants. And I think that's one of the reasons why people like you and me, and there's plenty of others out there too, that really enjoy the late season. Your dogs aren't overheating. And the pheasants are pretty predictable. They are where we thought they were, as I like to say. So they're easier to find.
Is that kind of channeling Denny Green a little bit? Is that... It's kind of, they are who we thought they were. So that brings up a couple of good points, because I've waded through a couple of the online Facebook group debates that have been raging lately about giving wildlife a rest, giving pheasant hunters, giving pheasants a break from hunting. This obviously, we're closed in Minnesota now, but before the season ended, and then the discussion of feeding them comes up, and then the discussion of what type of habitat. So I know we've already been going for quite a while, but I want to get into some of those topics, like should people try to feed pheasants this year? And then, what type of habitat is the best for emergency winter cover? And then when it comes to hunting, let's just start right there first. Are there days where you'll say, you're strapping on your orange, you look out the window, it's like, no, I'm not going today. I'm going to give them a break.
Yeah, I think from an ethical standpoint, every hunter sort of needs to make that personal decision. For me, and the guidance that I would give people is like, if there's a nasty storm coming in, and
Yeah.
you're going out the day before that and hunting pheasants when they're out, trying to, because they can feel the, I'm not sure if it's pressure changes or what, but all wildlife, they typically know when those big events are coming, and they're out gearing up for it. So I really don't like hunting pheasants before a huge system, because you're pushing them out of the winter cover where they're at, and whether they get back to that or not. If you are going to hunt them, do it more in the morning and give them the afternoon to sort of relocate to where they need to be. That would probably be the one big ethical consideration. But hunting late season, especially when conditions are difficult, I think the other side of the coin is pheasants have a really really high turnover rate,
Yeah.
despite whether we've got historic snow events or not. So taking the excess roosters out of the population isn't going to hurt anything. It's if anything, it's protecting the hens more in the winter cover, so they aren't getting kicked out by those bully roosters. So those would be probably the couple considerations I would put out there for folks.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've looked at is if there's a storm coming or some sort of event that's going to make it miserable for them, I let them get fat, fatten up and find some cover and ride the storm out. Then afterwards, or if when the weather gets nice, then I guess I personally don't have a problem going after them a little bit, especially late season if you've got a lot of roosters out there. I think it's good to thin them out just a little bit. And then when it comes to obviously food plots are the key, and having a habitat mosaic, which we can get more into in just a second. But when it comes to feeding the birds, now that's another debate that's come up, and I've seen it come up about deer. And obviously nobody recommends feeding deer because of chronic wasting disease. That's been all the news the last few years. But when it comes to feeding pheasants, obviously you don't. When you start feeding wildlife and you feed them to the point where they get dependent on you feeding them, that's obviously not a good situation.
No, absolutely not. And you hit it on the head. Like, I've gotten tons of email, maybe not tons, but I've gotten more than we have in the past 3 to 4 years, because we've had pretty mild winters. Lots of calls from people say like, "Hey, do you guys sell pheasant feeders, or where can I get corn to feed in my backyard," and this and that. And there really isn't a scenario where Pheasants Forever, Quill Forever even suggests feeding, even in like a historic event, I guess they called that first big snowstorm we had this year just before Christmas. Unfortunately, there's many well-intentioned people out there who provide corn or other grains as food sources, and they actually harm pheasants more than they can help. Number one, feeders really give predators a focus point similar to a bait pile, and it's really rare for pheasants to starve. As we talked about at the beginning of the show, they've got a lot of things in their back pocket that they can focus on. Like ragweed, for instance, giant ragweed, where they can find it actually has more caloric intake than corn or beans, and a lot of people don't know that. Where you have ragweed patches, man, the pheasants really key in on that stuff. But that's just one example. But poorly placed feeders that can draw pheasants out and away from protective winter cover. They cause birds to congregate and expend energy competing for food. And then the one point that you looked at right now, disease transfer, particularly of avian flu, and how many waterfowl that's killed on this continent, is another consideration that deserves, I think, a little bit of caution. And it is essentially a bait pile. So like you pointed out, in the age of CWD, it's illegal in a lot of cases where people live. So we really don't focus on that. Food plots, on the other hand, they're a function of habitat, right? If designed correctly, they can really take care of the issue. So square or block designed food plots of 3 to 10 acres are preferable. You might as well design something. If you're relying on feeding's not going to save a whole pheasant population. You got to have the habitat elements, and food plots are part of that. They can play, especially in the type of weather we're having now. They can be really good. But unfortunately for grassland birds, I think, and sometimes I don't even like saying this, but the harsh reality is that they're designed to die. They're designed to die with high turnover rates. Yet, they can flourish, as we saw, from this spring and this fall, when conditions are right. They can really flourish. So I think people should keep that in mind and plan ahead of time,
Well, pheasants live 2 years, maybe 3 years. So they are turning over pretty quick. And that's why the conditions in the spring and having that nesting cover is so important. That winter thermal cover though, when you're designing, I think, did David just show up? I think David's joining the show here in a second. That's why the dogs are barking.
All good.
When you say you've got 80 acres and right now it's just black dirt, and you're in charge of managing it, Jared, and you're going to plant some grasses, maybe a mix, and then you're going to be able to put a couple food plots in. And what are you going to do about winter cover and thermal cover? Like when people talk about having trees on the landscape, and when you talk about prairie restoration, that usually involves trees coming off the landscape. There's a difference I was reading this article from Pheasants Forever, and there's a difference in tree height basically versus like say tall trees versus woody cover, which would be more of that shorter willowy shrub type cover. What's the idea when if you were designing a landscape and you want to put some thermal cover in and some food plots, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I think number one, I'd talk to a Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever biologist instead of the PR guy. But this,
yeah, sorry,
no, you're good. This specific article, pheasants don't grow in trees. I think it's probably one of the best articles ever written. It got a lot of comments online from folks, and really, it's really based on research. So when you look at trees in general. Grassland and trees, as it mentioned in the article, have really waged war for centuries in North America here. But when it comes to our favorite upland species, pheasants in particular, undisturbed nesting cover and the associated nesting success with that remains the absolute choke point for upland birds. We just don't have enough of it. Are we having a really bad winter right now? Certainly. In some places we are. In some of the drought-stricken places, we're getting some moisture back in the landscape, which is good. But we're doing a podcast here, I think, at the end of the week that includes a couple different people, including Rachel Bush, who's my colleague and staffer up in North Dakota. And I really think she says it best about, that tree rows often break up big blocks of grassland habitat, inviting predators to an upland species smorgasbord, as she says. And, those trees that we hunt as humans, we're a predator. That's the same thing other predators are using too. So I think looking at it from that standpoint, a lot of hunters fail to make that distinction between trees, stuff that grow higher. 15 feet is really the deck that we use. If it's higher than 15 feet, you need to be looking at more desirable woody cover. So things like shrubs like dogwoods, wild plum bushes, 9-bark. There are certain types. We do give a bad rap to, cedar trees and those types of things. But some of them are genetically changed now so that they really can't spread onto the landscape, short stature, evergreens, but making a nice tree row with a minimum of 15 rows. Cause a lot of people are like, well, I've got this really nice, 3 to 4 row shelter belt, of all the right native species. Well, that's not stopping. That's not giving a place for upland birds to spend a winter and really bad ones like we're having now, because that's all filled in with snow. So making sure you do it right, reading some of these articles, reaching out to a Pheasants Forever biologist, and then again on the food plot side, putting it next to your really high thermal or winter cover that you have, along with making it 3 to 10 acres. It's got to be big enough to sustain wildlife through an entire winter. Otherwise, it's a moot point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit different than the average pheasant, but during that blizzard, when I was standing behind my grove, it sure was a lot nicer than standing on the north side of it. And there's some tall trees in there, and then a row of tall pines, and then some corn and soybeans along the side of that. So.
And there's even programs out there through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and some of our other partners, and you have to be able to apply for those and have the right conditions, soil types, and whatnot. But really those wetland areas that have that desirable cattail cover that provides real thermal cover, like you were saying about when it's -40 and blowing outside, like it had been just a couple weeks ago. Inside those areas where pheasants can get in there and kind of create their own microclimates, it's above 0 degrees, and it really helps with the amount of calories that they're having to burn to keep warm and survive during the winter.
So thermal cover is important. Just having the right thermal cover is important, because out here in western Minnesota, a lot of trees are coming out, and I'm hearing about it from a lot of the hunters and a lot of the pheasant hunters, a lot of the deer hunters too, are worried about it. So there is some research going into it. Do I always agree with it? No, but I don't always agree with everything the DNR does either. But and I don't know if anybody does.
Looking at it from the standpoint of a pheasant, I think is the biggest thing. Like if you're a pheasant hunter, deer hunters, like you can't really speak to that. I'm a below average deer hunter. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that straight up. But elm trees, cottonwoods, Siberian elm, buckthorn, prickly ash. There's a lot of undesirable species out there where people see those getting taken out and think like, oh, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt our upland bird populations. Those types of cover don't do a darn thing for pheasants. So that's why we're focusing on native species and putting in shrubs or woody cover as opposed to trees. So anything that's above that 15 to 20 foot in height, you're asking for avian predators, foxes, skunks to move in and use those tree lines to get into your nesting cover. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a detriment to your pheasant population more than if you wouldn't have taken those out.
Yeah, you can take out every. Oh, look at that picture. That's a good one right there.
Oh, look at that.
You can take out every cottonwood tree. I mean, me and my buddy Jason Markla last year sat and tried to eliminate all the little volunteer cottonwoods that he had going up in his grass. Man, those things spread like crazy. And those trees I'm definitely not a fan of at all out there.
No, I mean, it and you've done it. So, like, if you're taking those out, all it takes is 1 or 2 years, and you've lost control of your primary nesting habitat from letting those trees go. Because those get 2 inches or bigger, sort of at chest height. Those are turning into trees really, really quick. And pheasant nesting success just dive bombs when you have that.
You brought up skunks and nest predators like raccoons. The raccoon population, I think, is crazy right now, and I don't think that gets enough discussion. When Corey Loeffler and I took a trip down to Missouri and back this spring to do a turkey trip, we saw more raccoons than maybe we've ever seen out there. And granted, we were spending a lot of time driving around and covering a lot of miles, but there were raccoons all over the place. What do you think we can do to try to control that population of those nest predators a little bit?
Well, one of the things to control the predators themselves is dilution. So like it's putting more habitat on the landscape, because a lot of people talk about like, well, I've got these linear buffer strips, and I'm seeing a lot of raccoon activity. Well, if you're spreading those creatures out on a larger landscape and putting more habitat down, you're going to have less of an issue. I would say the other one is trapping too. And one thing trapping, I think, is a topic that brings a lot of concern from upland hunters and bird dog owners, especially, right? Because there's that issue between, maybe not issue, but bird hunters running into trappers or running into traps during the season. And actually at Pheasant Fest this year, we've got just a hardcore trapper, Jerry Snetzinger, who's been doing it for 40 years. He's called the Trap Doctor. He's coming to give an awesome presentation about what you can carry with you in the field to make sure that you're not running into any issues and that trappers and upland hunters can work side by side. But outside of that, Pheasants Forever really recommends dilution. I mean, it's just putting quality habitat on the landscape, spreading out those predators so they aren't given linear strips to go and focus on. And, coyotes typically have been public enemy number one for upland hunters. Like that's the reason why we don't have grassland birds. And at the end of the day, coyotes are eating your raccoons. There's not much that eats a skunk other than maybe a stupid dog, or owls are about the only thing. They don't have olfactory sense. They can't smell, so they're about the only thing that will that I've seen from research out of Iowa State that'll actually eat them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Dumb dogs and owls.
Owls.
My dogs have been there. I digress.
I think everybody's has. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think just having a quality habitat plan in place, and Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, we're here to help with that.
Well, I know there's those dog-proof traps you can get for raccoons too. That
coon cuffs. Cuffs, I think they're called.
Could help kind of control that population a little bit without putting your dog in danger. All right. Well, you brought up Pheasant Fest because I want to tell people they should watch for the billboards around Minneapolis. Maybe the greatest billboard ever in the history of billboards for Pheasant Fest this year.
I think so. I believe that's a picture you took, correct?
It is. It's a picture. That picture too, and I don't think that's the one on the billboard, Dan. But if you go to the Pheasant Fest, pheasantsforever.org, you'll see it on the top. There's a banner there that'll scroll across. But I just went for a walk with the dogs one day, just with the camera during the hunting season, and they got real birdy on the edge of these cattails, and that rooster got up so close to me, I almost put the camera up just to defend myself because it was flying right at my face.
Happens.
Hit the shutter button, and thankfully I got a really fast shutter, and it took a couple of pictures that were surprisingly in focus, and that's the one that's on the billboard and that's on the website and all that. So I appreciate you guys using it.
Yeah, that photo is going to be strung out all over Minnesota, even over into Wisconsin. We've got 45 billboards that are going up right now to advertise for National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic, which is coming to the Minneapolis Convention Center February 17th through the 19th. And if you've never been there before, or you haven't been there in a few years, it really is. It's the largest gathering of upland hunters and bird dog owners in North America, in the world. And it really is a fun, whether you're trying to figure out a training regimen for a new dog you might have. We have some of the best bird dog trainers in the country. You want habitat recommendations. We've got biologists standing by that'll look at your property on an aerial photo and provide what you need to have a successful grassland habitat plan in place. There's a lot of other things there as well. We're going to be discussing the new farm bill coming up. The North American Grasslands Conservation Act, Recovering America's Wildlife Act, big legislation that can really be a turning point for pheasants and quail and other grassland wildlife. So lots of things to do, over 400 exhibitors, and I hope everybody will come out and join us at National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic on February 17th through the 19th.
It's a fun show to do, and I know it travels around, so it only comes back into Minnesota every few years. So it's nice for people that can't or don't aren't able to travel to it in other states. If they're here in Minnesota, this is a nice and close opportunity for them to go to it. It's a lot of fun, and if you it's a chance to sit around and talk hunting with your buddies, and then there's so much advocacy done in the political, realm when it comes to the farm bill and some of these other bills. And sometimes it's hard for somebody that doesn't live and breathe that stuff. Sometimes it's hard for them to comprehend and wade through all the political speak to understand what's truly going on there. So it's nice to be able to go to an event like this and speak to some of the people that it's their job to understand the ins and the outs of these bills and learn a little bit more about what it means and how important it is to find ways to support these things.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think advocacy is underrated in this country.
Yeah.
You need to have a voice for wildlife, and that comes through policy. And we've got 3 to 4 just great people that are in Washington, weekly working on those types of things. So we're hoping to have, we don't have, names down yet, but we're waiting for confirmation from some big time legislators that hopefully are going to be at our event. We're looking at having some top brass from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The Minnesota DNR is going to play a big part this year. They've got a large booth. If you want to come and learn about some of the awesome relationships or partnerships that we have with them, come on out. But everything from guns and gear to bird dogs to habitat management. We've got some banquets that are already sold out, by the way, which is awesome in the evening. But one thing people can look forward to as well is the Thursday night before the show starts. So I believe that'll be the 16th, Thursday, the evening of the 16th. We've got an Upland Film Festival. We're going to be bringing 5 different films to the Poorhouse in downtown Minneapolis. it was a wonderful event last time. And if you want to meet some like-minded people, that's a great place to do it. So we've got some short films from Project Upland and a whole bunch of different partners. So I would encourage people to get a ticket for that, because it's going to sell out pretty fast.
Yeah, that'd be fun to go to. And then, Dan, one of these years we got to make a film for that. Got to get that done.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah,
I'd love to see it.
For sure. All right, Jared. Well, where can we find out more about Pheasant Fest? And then if we want to learn more about, putting in the proper habitat or learning more about trees on the prairie and all of that good stuff, where can we find all that info?
Yeah. So you can go to pheasantsforever.org, pheasantsforever.org, or if you want to learn more about Pheasant Fest, it's just pheasantfest.org. We've got all sorts of, you can click on the stories tab at pheasantsforever.org and check out all the great stories. Cooking recipes we have. Kang Yang at Minnesota Hunter just put up one for pheasant curry. That's a real winner. So I encourage people to go on there and check it out, and hope that you'll join us here in just a few months for National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic.
Do you know who's going to be speaking yet or anything, or doing seminars?
Seminar schedule is going to go up here shortly. We've got, as far as dog trainers go, we've got some of the best ones throughout the country. Purina, Sport Dog are going to be there, and all the top trainers that go with them. So people can watch for a full rundown of that. That'll be on the site here. Due dates for some of our seminar stuff were just a few weeks ago, and it's going to be put up here around January 6th and afterwards. So you can watch for that, and we're going to have the show guide on there as well here shortly.
Very good. The 2023 National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic, February 17th to 19th, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Jared Wiklund, Pheasants Forever. Thanks for the time today on the show.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it.
Ice fishing season is here. This winter, plan a trip to Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Not only will you have the chance to catch their legendary perch, but this year, Haybale Heights has been catching big walleye after big walleye. And they're doing it from a mobile, comfortable snow bear. No matter how cold it is outside, you're warm and toasty on the inside. Learn more and book a trip today at haybaleheights.com. That's haybaleheights.com. Live Target, the leader in Match the Hatch, is back with new lures that also match the action. Introducing the Live Craw. The Live Craw is irresistible to bass, walleye, and other freshwater species. FTech's winner, the Ultimate Frog, looks and acts just like a swimming frog. With an exposed ultra-point mustad hook and replaceable legs, the Ultimate Frog has 2 styles, 2 sizes, and 8 colors. And iCast and FTech's winner, the Live Shrimp, mimics a fleeing shrimp for saltwater anglers. Coming soon from Live Target.
Come ice fish the famous waters of Minnesota's Lake of the Woods, the walleye capital of the world. Experience full-service resorts featuring heated fish houses, ice transportation, meal plans, and sleeper house options. From the Northwest Angle to the South Shore, Rainy River, and Baudette, the Midwest's #1 ice fishing destination. Walleye, sauger, perch, and northern pike. Minnesota's Lake of the Woods, best fishing anywhere. For more information, log on to lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
This is Sporting Journal Radio. I'm Bret Amundson. Thanks for tuning in right here wherever you're watching / listening to this. Dan Amundson and David Eckhardt with us right over there as well. And Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods Tourism is going to join us right now. Joe, we've just been here in western Minnesota digging out of the snow. I think this last storm, I don't think it made it all the way up to Lake of the Woods, did it?
No, it didn't. No, we missed with the big blunt of the snow, which is great because it gives us the opportunity to just have that much easier traveling conditions, I guess.
Yeah, and fishing, it sounds like it's been pretty good. And, I've been seeing nice walleyes coming out of Lake of the Woods, of course, already this winter, but also been seeing, sturgeon and eelpout and some of the other species. And I feel like, Lake of the Woods is a walleye capital, but more and more people are getting excited about some of these other fish to catch. And I mean, this is Lake of the Woods and Rainy River, of course, world-class fisheries for sturgeon and some of these other fish, including the state record eelpout, right?
It is, yeah. In fact, the last few state record eelpout, the current one is right around 19.5 pounds. And I'll tell you, there have been so many big eelpout caught this year, and a lot of them. I mean, every time you turn around on social media, people are holding up monster eelpout, and they put up a good fight. they're delicious, table fare. They call eelpout poor man's lobster. It's a freshwater cod. They call it a burbot. They call it a lawyer. There's a lot of different names for an eelpout. For people that aren't so in tune with ice fishing, just know that it wasn't that long ago, maybe 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe, that you'd go up to Lake of the Woods and you'd see eelpout scattered occasionally across the ice. Anglers would catch them and they'd throw them out on the ice. And I'll never forget the time that I was driving on the lake and I thought I saw somebody ice fishing. Well, lo and behold, it wasn't anybody ice fishing. It was a big eagle eating an eelpout. But they used to be thrown on the ice. And eventually over time, people started realizing that, hey, this is considered freshwater cod. It's in the cod family. And if you take that meat out of the back strap and the back two tail pieces, you cube it, and then you boil it in either 7-Up or salt water. In fact, I just heard a new recipe. Some guys on Facebook said that they were boiling it in water with that seasoning.
With what seasoning in it?
That Old Bay seasoning. It's kind of a traditional seafood seasoning. And but anyway, you boil them like that, and then you dip it in melted butter, and the consistency is a little bit more firmer white meat. Very, very tasty. And so now it's so funny. It used to go from, hey, these things are gross. Get that thing out of the fish. They'll throw it in the ice. To, you know what? And by the way, it's illegal throwing fish on ice. It's called littering. So don't ever do that. But now it's like, man, I hope I catch an eelpout or two when I'm up there walleye fishing because we want to have them as an appetizer. The other thing about eelpout is they're just kind of a cool looking fish. People talk about how when you grab them, they wrap around your arm, and they don't really wrap around your arm. That tail curls up, but they don't wrap around your arm. I got to tell you a really funny story.
I know what story you're talking about, Joe. I was just going to ask you to tell it anyway because it's hilarious.
Oh, gosh. We're on the same page. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Well, I was at the St. Paul Ice Fishing Show, and I had some young guys come up from the Twin Cities, and they came up and talked to me at the booth a couple years ago. And they said, yeah, man, we made it at the Lake of the Woods for the first time. So much fun. We're going again. Every year now it's tradition, da-da-da. And, oh, yeah, man, I caught my first eelpout. I go, oh, cool, man. Congrats. How'd that go for you? He goes, well, I got to tell you, man, it was weird. He says, I caught this eelpout, and you grab it, and they kind of squirm around. They're hard to grab, and I looked at this thing, and I was just weird looking. So that night, it was time to hit the rack. I was sleeping on the top bunk. I went up on the top bunk and started laying there, and I just kept thinking about this eelpout. Just kind of freaking me out, man. I couldn't sleep. So finally, I got down, put covers on all the holes, and went back to bed. I don't know what to say.
Like it's a snakehead and it's going to come crawling out of the lake or something.
Yeah, But hey, it made him feel more comfortable, and I realized he could fall asleep then. So God bless him.
Wow. I think people call them ugly or whatever, trash fish. I think they're way cool looking. And I'll tell you what, the fight. I don't know how many times we've hooked into nice sized eelpout and think that it's a monster walleye on there. I mean, after a little while, you'll start to get to it has a little bit of a different tug to it. But we've been tricked many times thinking you got a big walleye on when you're catching one of those eelpout, and they're fun to catch.
Oh, they are. Well, and you're so right though, because there are times like when you. Oh no, not the eelpout slap.
You remember this one?
Oh man.
Oh no.
For listeners out there, Danny's showing a old Facebook video of somebody having a few too many barley sodas, and one of them getting slapped with an eelpout in the fish cleaning house by its tail. But when you look at their backs and the coloring on them, their coloring is really cool. And then know that they're like basically dormant in the summer months. You hardly ever catch one. Once in a great while, you hear of an eelpout being caught in the summer, but they come to life when that ice hits, and it's a real cold water fish.
And the spawn balls, there's just so many interesting things about them. I think they're fun to catch, and I'm glad people
talk like there's a lot of people that don't understand how they spawn. Explain that spawn ball.
Can we find some video of it? Because it's going to be easier just to
buy me
show.
some time.
Okay.
Dance a little bit here.
Well, it's a big ball of fish. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it.
You're doing a bad job so far.
Yeah, that's why I said find a video.
So what happens is all these eelpout get together, and honestly, it's like a ball. They're all swimming amongst each other. It's almost like they're re-sliming each other, but they're all on a big ball. And that spawning ritual takes place under the ice. Normally, I think it's in the month and towards the end of February, typically. And it's amazing they all get together like that, and it's incredible footage. But again, very unique fish. Now, is actually getting to a point where some people start targeting them, and and actually, Brett, remember we talked about last year how the DNR made them a sport fish, right?
Yeah, which I think is good, and I think having limits on these fish is something that's been necessary for a while. I'm just watching this footage here.
Trying to find the spawn ball here,
Sure.
not just people fishing. This is from Angling Buzz, by the way.
This is pretty cool underwater footage of.
But it's great underwater footage. And it's even fun just to see how they swim and how they take a bait, and
Yeah, they're cool fish. And I think the increased popularity is the reason why they're going to be managed as game fish and why you need to have limits on a fish like this. And now most of the people that are targeting them are catching and releasing them. That's the other great thing about it. I mean, I have no problem with somebody wanting to keep some to eat some. We ate some crappies last night. They were delicious. I'm all about eating them, just not taking more than you need. And obviously, if you're going to sit and target a fish, all night or for a couple of days, or if you're on a trip, you don't need to keep everyone that you catch. And the glow, that's cool. Well, not really. Just seeing some really cool fishing footage here. Some eel pout.
Yeah, I don't know. I was lied to.
That's funny.
But they are cool fish, and the other, I think in addition to eel pout, we talked about once in a while you'll hook into a sturgeon, you'll catch tulies. Tulies, people call them whitefish, but really on Lake of the Woods, almost all the time they have whitefish on Lake of the Woods, but whitefish is a different kind of fish.
Mm-hmm.
You got your tulies, and I think your tulies have more of Brett, don't they have more? Do they have an underbite or overbite?
I always get them mixed up. Which one is which? The jaw is just a little bit different. I think the fins are just a hair different.
And the whitefish have a little bit of a golden tint to them, whereas the tulibies are very silver. The whitefish get larger; they get to be 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds, whereas tulibies typically are in that 1 to 2 pound range, if not smaller. And I'll tell you, but the tulibies, most people don't eat them, like fry them up. What they normally do is they'll clean them up and then they'll, actually just smoke them. And so they're real good smoked.
Yeah, the whitefish has a snout that overhangs the lower jaw, and the lower jaw of the cisco or tulibee extends up to or beyond the tip of the snout. So the whitefish has got the overbite.
The whitefish has an overbite, and the tulibee has an underbite.
Yeah. And we've smoked tulibees. They're delicious. I think they're, to me, it's almost like a trout, basically. I think they're fun. I think they're fun to catch too. I mean, show me a fish that really isn't that much fun to catch. I think, this isn't really controversial, but I think people will tell you that while walleyes get to be targeted most of the time, sometimes they're the least fun to catch. Yeah. It's more of a mental thing, trying to catch them and trying to trick the walleye. But the fight of, say a tulibee or an eel pout or a sturgeon might be better than a walleye.
Well, Danny would tell you, got to start fishing in body water has bigger walleyes.
It wouldn't matter for him, let's be real. Come on.
I thought I'd just throw a little gas in the fire between you boys. But
Yeah,
I will say this.
Big walleye.
We talked about the multi-species. The other thing is pike. And, pike get targeted most of the time on Lake of the Woods in March, with tip-ups because, pike aren't a schooling fish, but they get congregated in the same areas prior to the pre-spawn. And they're real hungry. So, but it's funny because when you're fishing on Lake of the Woods, so many walleye anglers catch big pike. I hear about every single day. And we're talking big pike. We're talking 20-plus pounders. It's just amazing how many big pike there are in the system. I had a resort owner say to me recently, "What are we going to do about the problem with all these big pike in the lake?" And I'm like, "What?" Everybody has a different perspective on them.
They're eating all the walleyes.
What?
Yeah, but. And then, of course, the other thing is jumbo perch. And, there's a lot of big perch. You don't catch a lot of perch on Lake of the Woods typically, but when you do, they're normally just sleds. Brett, I got a good one for you. I got a good story for you. So I talked to 2 different parties this year that were ice fishing on Lake of the Woods. And in both cases, eel pout were coming under the ice and hitting their transducer.
Really?
I've heard of that.
And, yeah, that puts out vibration. Mm-hmm. And I think those fish are probably more sensitive to the vibration and the scent and things like that, even more so than their sight. And, think about it. They're right away. And actually, a lot of those fish, big fish, predators, sometimes they'll cruise right under the ice. It's not uncommon to be looking down at your hole, looking at your bobber, and all of a sudden you see a monster pike go right under the hole. Well, the reason they're cruising under the ice, they're scavengers. If they can get a meal for free and not have to chase it down, they're going to do it. And a lot of the fish, the smaller saugers or walleyes, some of them don't make it, and some of them end up under the ice. So they come by and just get a free meal. Well, eelpout were coming down to the point where they were hitting that transducer, and the guy just said, "Hey, let me lift my transducer. I'm going to drop my spoon down. As soon as you dropped it down, bang, you got that fish."
All right, new challenge, Dan and David. Next time, our next trip to Lake of the Woods, which is coming in a couple of weeks, we're going noodling for eelpout under the ice.
I don't know if you can noodle in Minnesota legally.
In our regulations,
Probably not.
No, can't do that.
Dang it! But
we'd end up doing it, and it'd be a big pike would come up and grab a hold of our thumb or something.
Hey, death equals ratings. I'm filming.
Right. Well, we're excited. We're coming up there as part of a glow trip coming up here in a couple of weeks, Joe. I'd assume we're going to see up there for that as well.
Yeah, hoping to be up there. It conflicts with a Chicago sports show I have a little bit, but we'll got to see what we can do. And but I'm excited. I mean, we've been up in a fish house together before, and I'll tell you, when we get up there, there's good fishing to be had. Obviously, we create good content, good media. We're always with people from the industry. We're good folks. A lot of the folks have never been to Lake of the Woods before, which is always kind of neat. And you know what? Work hard, play hard. We always have a good time, don't we?
Absolutely. And for those of you wondering what a glow is, if you're an outdoor communicator, writer, podcaster, whatever, consider the Association of Great Lakes Outdoor Writers, and you get to go places like Lake of the Woods with guys like us. So, but you should come anyway and be a part of it. So consider joining a glow, and you can learn more about it. aglowOutdoors.com. Is that the website, Joe? I should know this.
You should know this.
Yeah, I should know.
Go to the outdoor feed.
There you go. theoutdoorfeed.com. Yeah. aglowOutdoors.com or aglowinfo.org or theoutdoorfeed.com. And that is something that you can just follow to get the latest outdoor content created by members of Aglow. And we'll be up at Lake of the Woods in a couple of weeks.
Brent, I should mention too, with Aglow, I mean, Aglow brings together destinations. It brings together companies that are and outdoor focused, and it also brings together media that are outdoor focused. And by bringing those three different groups of people together, they have programs for people that are in high school and college. If you're someday you want to get into that thing, there's scholarships available. But you get together, it's networking, it's education, and it's a professional deal. I have the ability, by being part of Aglow, not only as a destination but also as an outdoor media person myself, I have the privilege of rubbing elbows with some very, very talented communicators, and we call it the Association of Great Lakes Outdoor Writers. That's what its name was from way back, and we keep it. But this is way more than writing. It's the most cutting edge forms of communication and media that there are out there, and we got some people that are part of our organization that are very skillful at it.
Yeah, I call it content creators, basically. It's whether they're writers or TV hosts or podcasters, radio guys, we're all creating outdoors content. So it's outdoors content creators, and we get together, we get to share some experiences and learn from each other, and then tell people about the outdoors. It's a pretty neat organization. It's been a lot of fun. And we have no fun on these trips either, Joe. None at all.
Well, and I will say too, I mean, it's neat, the diversity that's part of Aglow. We got all different sorts of people, different age groups, men and women. I mean, you name it, we got them, and we encourage people to join. It's a very good group, very welcoming group. It's not expensive to be part of the association. A lot of our very gracious sponsors will put money towards the program. They believe in it so much, and that offsets the cost of us being part of it. So it's just a neat deal. And if you are interested in that sort of thing, I would say look into it. But Brett, we have no fun at these meetings. It's all work, no play, and you know what? It's why I have such a headache when I go home after.
That's right. And Dan, pull up the outdoor feed, because if you're not an outdoor content creator, but just somebody that likes to learn more about the outdoors, we've got all of these members that have been doing this. The organization is 70 years old or whatever it is, and there's hundreds of members that make up a glow, and they're constantly sharing information about the outdoors, neat stories, tips, destination travel tips, travel ideas, how to catch fish, how to use this how to do this technique. Hey, there's a picture of David.
Hey, there it is.
Look at that guy. David's story, our podcast, other podcasts, all sorts of outdoor information, all in one place at the Outdoor Feed, outdoorfeed.org, or you can follow the Outdoor Feed on Twitter. You can follow it on Facebook as well. If you're on LinkedIn, you can follow it there too. So it's all in one place for you. So, all right, Joe, if people want to plan a trip to Lake of the Woods, what should they do for more info?
It's prime time, baby. Come on up. You know what? Lake of the Woods, mn.com.
Sporting Journal Radio is a division of Macaba LLC. If you've got a question, comment, or story idea for us, send us an email. Go to sportingjournalradio.com. While you're there, you can learn how to advertise on the show and visit our store for hats, hoodies, coffee mugs, and more. Go to sportingjournalradio.com.